noise like there was a
There.
bee.
I did an auto gain.
That was wrong. It did not
The
gain.
the
It lost.
It's actually quieter now than it was.
It was, but now it's back to where it was.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can never seem to solve this problem that it wants to make the volume lower.
Okay, and they're
And I
saying I'm
I don't
faint too, so let me fix
balance
me
us.
as well.
Yeah, it's like a group therapy session.
Yeah. Um Settings. I need to find settings. Have you ever come into your studio and decided that your monitors were drunk? Because all of my monitors are on arms, and apparently, like, all of the vibrations from having our roof worked on caused them to shift
That's
positions.
funny.
And I walked down, and it was like, oh my God, my desk had a really good Friday night. I will be posting a picture of that later because they are still drunk. I did not fix them before this stream. Okay, output. No, I want input, sorry. Input fee fine mic. It has the gain all the way up. Testing. Testing. Nope, that's the wrong direction. Testing. Testing. All right, so my gain is up. I will adjust it in software as well. Hello. Maresy dotes and dozy dotes, a kiddly divey too. Still low. Testing. I think that's better. All right, let's hear you, Fraser.
Can you hear me okay? Testing, testing.
Your levels look better.
Okay. Yeah, that's the problem is that we've got the Zoom, my input level, the level that Zoom is taking my audio in at, the level that your Zoom is playing the audio out at, the
Yeah.
level that your recording software, or I guess your streaming software, is then putting that out to YouTube, and the level that YouTube is showing. So there's like 5 places where the audio levels can be shut down, distorted, changed, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah. Chaos. It is chaos.
chaos, madness.
All right, I think I've found all the places I can adjust the volume. Thank you for the sub refs, Matt. Thank you. And Joe
But
Dub,
instead
thank
of
you for the
subbing
comment
to us
on my
on
hair.
Twitch, you should join our Patreon.
Yeah. I think he's already in our Patreon, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, then thank you for the thank you for the sub. But yeah, Patreon is the best way. Like, people always ask me, like, should I give you a donation on YouTube? Should I follow you on Twitch? Sub you on Twitch? Patreon lets us keep 95% of the money. Twitch takes a much bigger chunk. I don't know what it is. YouTube, same thing.
Yeah.
So if you want to support billionaire companies, then use their subscription services. And if you want to support CosmoQuest and Astronomy Cast, use Patreon.
I have to admit, though, I have subbed people on Twitch just to get their emotes.
Yeah, no, I mean, if
Yeah.
there's something that the Twitch is providing that you can't get any other way, then you've got to do what you got to do.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Sometimes the emotes are worth it.
Yeah. Um, okay.
I need recording software open. I was really good about, I have all the links I need. Forgot the audio software. Opened the
Right.
links, forgot the audio software. I would like to state one of my great frustrations is the New York Times has been paywalling absolutely everything lately.
Why? They're paying for ads?
I don't know why they're paywalling everything.
Oh, they're paywalling. I think they said payrolling.
No. They're paywalling everything.
Okay.
And I was not going to get a New York Times subscription just to uh, read the obituary of Eugene Parker in the New York Times. But
Mm,
like 2 or 3 times a week, I hit a paywall and it just, I get it. I understand it. I mostly
mhm.
respect it, but I don't want to give the New York Times any of my money.
Why not?
They've their journalism isn't as neutral as it used to be.
Mm.
So I'm happy to
Ye-
pay for the Washington Post. I'm not going to pay for both.
So, I mean, this is probably a rant for the end of the
Uh
episode,
huh.
but it's a funny thing where, like, look, for example, University of Dana, we make, let's say, 10% of the advertising revenue that we made 5 years ago,
Yeah.
right? So take a number, maybe 20%, just to be safe, it's 20%. So if we made 100% 5 years ago and I was able to fund my entire team on it,
Yeah.
we now make 20% of that money. And I can't fund my team on it.
Yeah.
And so the only way that I fund my team is with Patreon and with advertising that comes from YouTube.
Yeah.
So what we're going through at Universe today has got to be the same issue that people are going through at New York Times and all these other
Yeah.
places, that you have a couple of options. One is you paywall your content.
Yeah.
And then just, if you're not part of the paywall, then you don't get to read the content. And that's just like, it's, you go watch a movie, the movie is paywalled. You don't get to watch the movie in the theater unless you pay the money to watch the movie.
Right.
So the question is the content good enough to be able to support that?
Yeah.
Because the advertising just no longer supports the creation of the content.
Yeah.
And I think if I didn't have Patreon, I would have shut Universe Today down.
Yeah.
Like, I would have just gone and gotten a different job. Like, I
Yeah.
would
No,
no longer be
Patreon
doing this
is
job.
saving us. And what's getting
Yeah.
me is I need to get better about writing for Substack because there are people on Substack
Mhm.
making bank.
Yeah. I mean, I have all kinds of ethical problems with using Substack as a
Oh,
platform.
okay. I need to
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
I don't.
They look into it. There's
Okay.
a bunch of problematic content that they are allowing on the
Oh,
channel. And I think they shouldn't. They should ban those people. So, I roll my own emailing software and I don't
yeah.
charge for it. I bundle it into the larger Patreon, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to charging people specifically for the newsletter itself. It's free. But yeah, so I think that for people, the people who consume content, um, the advertising no longer pays for it. And so if you hit
Yeah.
paywalls, I think, it's perfectly fine to go, nope. But I don't think it's fine to be frustrated at the paywall. I think you can go, nope, I don't care about the content enough to consume it. And I wish somebody hadn't linked me to a source that has a site with a paywall. But I think everything, like, mark my words, everything is going to be a paywall,
Yeah.
or everything is going to be Patreon. And in some cases, the Patreon will be the paywall. Like, you won't be able to access it without being part of the Patreon, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's where we're at right now. And I think, it's funny because, I watch people and they're like, oh, I hate paywalls. I'm like, well, yeah, obviously, right? Nobody wants to have a paywall. Like,
I
but
think
you
the
have to
thing that
pay
gets me
salaries
with
for
the New
people.
York, sorry, I didn't mean to finish.
No, 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 no. I do to you. Do it.
I think the thing about the New York Times paywall that got me is the whimsy of what they do and don't paywall. Because I will often find newer articles that aren't paywalled.
Mhm.
And I was trying to look at a several year old obituary, and it just felt like that should be something that isn't paywalled.
Yeah.
I just, I want better logic.
Well, the logic is whatever gets you to sign up to their paywall,
Yeah, I did not. I did not.
right? And so having a piece of information that's old and it's only available in that one location is
Yeah,
better for them.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, so I it's a um Yeah, Zap saying advertisers worked out that no one watches online ads anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that the advertisements, like the quantity, the supply has gone exponential thanks to AI and just thanks to content farms, thanks to people just creating content. Like there's an infinite amount of content now available to advertise
Yeah.
against. And so if you have the same, so I have like declining viewership, readership on Universe Today.
Yeah.
Like we're down about a quarter to about a quarter of the visitors that we had, say, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's mostly because Google is intercepting the queries and no longer sending you traffic. Like
Right. No,
in
they're
the olden days,
AIing the response to
yeah,
everything now.
yeah,
I
yeah,
hate it.
exactly. So you ask a question and Google gives you the answer, and then that's that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um,
It's getting super frustrating.
yeah. And I mean the downside is it's going to make the internet unusable except for these single small islands of bespoke, hand curated content like what Universe Today is. And so in theory, we are in striking distance now of just going ad free. Like I think I'd say within a year, we won't have any ads on Universe Today, and then we won't have a paywall. We'll just have Patreon
Yeah.
that pays for the content, and that's like the perfect world. But we're not quite there yet. So, but I will because it breaks my heart that 25% of our revenue comes from advertisements that make the website noticeably worse,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's frustrating, but I couldn't pay people salaries if I didn't have the advertising,
Yeah.
right? The
You
other
and I made
possibility, go ahead.
different choices. I beg for money through our fundraisers. We
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
successful over the weekend on our fundraiser. That made me happy. And you're still dealing with advertisers. And
yeah,
for me, it's a quarter of my budget comes from the one-time direct donations, and for you, it's a quarter of the revenue comes from
yeah,
advertising.
yep,
And yours makes your website worse, and mine makes my quality of life worse. So
right. Well, no, I mean, just the no, I mean, I think that being asked to support a thing, people get annoyed at,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
right? So it's just, what's the alternative? So we're always having to deal with these situations.
I'm
Is and I
actually
think so, and I think what the New York Times is saying and what other people are saying is our content is so good that you should pay for it.
yeah,
And if you can't pay for it, that's fine. Use someone else's content. That's what a movie ticket is
yeah.
is your that's what buying a book is someone saying the contents in this book are so good that you're going to want to pay for it and you're going to be glad to spend the time and the money to consume this material. So I've got it. My wife just came in. I gotta connect with her for 1 second and
Okay,
then I haven't seen her all morning, so I just gotta chat with her briefly and then I'll come back. So
okay.
entertain the crowd. I'll be back in
I
a second.
shall. Ask me anything. I have YouTube and Twitter open, folks. So Hal McKinney is asking, does ChatGPT return New York Times content? Yes, yes, it does. But it often summarizes it incorrectly. So you have to read the original source because that AI summary at the top of a Google page doesn't always read things correctly. I hit that all the time. So Matthew Henson, he's not the creator of the Parker Solar Probe. He is the inspiration for it. He was 91 when it finally went off. Zap fan, I probably need to switch to DuckDuckGo. One of my frustrations with the switch is I have trained Google which sources I like to go to. So, because it does respond based on past site visits. So it's really good about sending me to sites that I know are reputable, and DuckDuckGo doesn't have that yet. All right, so Silent Searchlight over on Twitch says they shouldn't call it AI for artificial intelligence. They should call it AP for automated plagiarism. And welcome Amsterdam 90. Welcome. So I am an astrophysicist. Fraser Cain, my co-host, should return in a moment. There he is. He just needed to step off for a moment, and we are recording Astronomy
Okay.
Cast live. Oh, I'm being told to tell about bike riding and yellow lightsaber wielding. Well, the bike riding is fairly bland, but my husband used to make lightsabers as a hobby, and I never got my own lightsaber. Whenever I was doing a cosplay, I would just borrow one of his. And last month, the theme for First Friday at the local science museum, where I do a booth each month, was Star Wars. And so I pulled out a Jedi cosplay and went to borrow a lightsaber, and none of his lightsabers wanted to work. And I was super, super sad. And so my husband bought me a lightsaber with a pale yellow blade, which is the color I wanted. And the hilt is gorgeous and it's dueling caliber. So when I accidentally hit the ceiling light, the light is in more danger than the lightsaber.
Oh, good.
Um, it makes me
Like that
very happy.
dueling caliber. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
So people make them now so you can actually hit
Smack the
them
shit
against
out of
each
each
other.
other.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I
That's awesome.
love it.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, I am pressing record on the video. I am pressing record on the audio. Levels look good.
Okay.
All right.
I think my levels look okay as well. All right, let's get started.
Yeah.
Astronomy Cast, episode 728, Eugene Parker. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I am doing well. I am super excited. On October 4th, I'm giving a talk at the St. Louis Science Center. And it's during one of their themed events, and the theme for the night is Barbie and STEM careers. So I'm going to they encourage cosplay. So I have a pink suit and a pink dress, and I'm going to have my first slide says my job is space. And I'm going to talk about all the women throughout history who have basically done groundbreaking work while being citizen scientists. Um, yeah, so I'm super excited about that.
That sounds great. So I am also excited. I haven't mentioned this to you, Pamela, yet, but I'm going to be taking a trip after we record next week. So I'll be here next week, but then I'll be gone. I'm going to Europe for
Oh,
11 days with my kid. So
okay.
the other kid. And so I took my first kid to Japan. Now I'm taking my second kid to Iceland and Amsterdam. And
Oh,
so we are going to be in Iceland for 3 nights, and then we're going to be in Amsterdam for the rest of the time,
so
early
does that mean
October.
we need to record 2 episodes next week?
Maybe, but or maybe I can record while I'm afar. Maybe we'll figure that out. And the goal is to see the auroras, to be able to be in
Amazing.
Iceland and actually watch as we increase towards solar maximum. So I'm pretty stoked, and I'm looking forward to going back to Europe.
Amsterdam is one of my favorite cities. If I
It's
was
such a great city.
offered a job in the Netherlands, I'd move in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So last week we talked about the Parker Solar Probe, and as always, we like to talk about the person who inspired the mission. What makes this amazing and different is that Eugene Parker was there to watch the launch of the mission that shares his name. Why was he so influential on solar astronomy? And we'll talk about it in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. So this is you were quite excited about this. We
Yeah.
were talking about the Parker Solar Probe, and you're like, and you often would say, and by the way, he's still alive. Isn't it so adorable to watch him there at the launch site watching his spacecraft take off? And he's passed away
Yeah.
now, but
He was
but
alive for launch.
normally the people who the spacecraft are named after have passed away for a long time, and or in some cases hundreds of years, thousands of years in some cases, and yet he was there for the launch. So who was Eugene Parker?
He was a physicist who I'm pleased to say we have the same alma mater. We both went to the physics department at Michigan State University. He just did it half a century before I did. Um, he was a physicist, and his work ended up opening up the field of heliophysics. It didn't exist before him. He finished his undergraduate degree 21, 22. I couldn't tell what date he graduated. He then went to Caltech to do his PhD, which he did in 3 years, which blew my mind. He was then an instructor at the University of Utah for a few years before going to the Enrico Fermi Center at the University of Chicago, where he did the rest of his career. And as a baby professor, he postulated that the sun could have a magnetic field that triggered a solar wind. And when he submitted the paper for this, the referees, one of them one of them literally said that he needed to go to the library and read more because the paper was ludicrous. The paper was
Right.
soundly rejected by both referees, but the editor of the journal was Chandrasekhar, who was also at the University of Chicago, knew Eugene Parker, and he reviewed the math, he replicated the math, he could find nothing wrong with the math,
Hmm.
so he published the paper anyways. And so that was 1957, and I have to look at my notes to get all the dates right. So the paper was published in 1957. This was before we really had a lot of space probes. And in 1962, Mariner 2, on its way to Venus, measured the solar wind. And all the people who were still making fun of Eugene Parker for his ludicrous idea um, had to agree that he was right. And since then, the particular research paper that he published, the one that was soundly rejected with scathing criticism, has over 4,000 citations.
Wow.
It's
And
just amazing work.
so wait, did he postulate the existence of the solar wind based on the magnetic field of the sun? Like he guessed that the sun would have a magnetic field and therefore it should be producing a solar wind? Or was
Exactly.
he wasn't just suggesting that the source of the solar wind was the
No, we
magnetic
didn't
field?
know there was a solar wind at all.
Wow.
The solar wind was not to blame for aurora yet. I now want to go back and find out what they thought caused aurora up until this point because I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, he completely postulated the like he's also responsible for like the solar dynamo idea for magnetism in galaxies, and we can go into detail on all of this stuff. But in the 1950s, we didn't know there was a solar wind. He looked at the math, he looked at the magnetic field of the sun, and he's like, gotta be a solar wind.
Right.
And he did all the
Wow.
math to prove it from first principles. It was
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. And when Chandrasekhar looks through your math and gives it the green light, I mean, he's the guy who figured out the Chandrasekhar limit. I mean,
And
there was
he
a
was
documentary
also,
about him.
so Chandrasekhar, and
Yeah.
go back and listen to the episode we did on him. He was also soundly mocked for some of his principles until they were proven. So he understood that sometimes you have to wait for someone to die before your theories get accepted.
Yeah.
And he Parker was so lucky to have Chandrasekhar in his corner.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, we're gonna talk about this some more, but it's time for another break. And we're back. So like what else? I mean, so he made this groundbreaking sort of prediction,
Yeah.
which are like the best. I
Yeah.
mean, when someone predicts a thing in the universe and then someone takes a telescope or a mission or whatever and goes and finds that thing, those are some of the most impactful sort of advances in the science that are ever made. You think about Einstein's relativity, you think about various theories about black holes and so on. When someone makes that kind of a prediction and then the technology comes along to actually demonstrate that it's true, it really stands the test of time. So what else then? You know, how did he top that? What did he then go on to do?
So every biography I found of him described him using either the word visionary or a synonym for visionary. And he went on to also postulate what is now called the Parker spiral, which he was a magnetic physicist. He wasn't, the field of solar science, the field of heliophysics didn't exist, and his work spanned multiple areas. He was a magnetic fields physicist. So, in looking at the sun's magnetic field, which he continued to do, he realized that the rotation of the sun would cause drag on the magnetic field. And this had, there was drag between the two of them, is a better way to put it. And this would have two impacts. So one thing he predicted was what's called the Parker spiral. So between 10 and 20 AU out from the sun, the magnetic field begins to twist. And so if you look at the large scale structure of our sun's magnetic field, it actually has a spiral structure to it. It's an Archimedes spiral.
Hmm.
It's that classic shape that appears in everything from snail's shells to the grand design spirals. Well, it's also in the magnetic field of the sun. And on the other side of that, he realized that one of the things that is probably leading to the differential rotation of the sun, where we see the equator and the northern and southern latitudes rotating at different rates, was probably the magnetic field having an effect on the surface as well. So he was able to figure out these two different major components of what the magnetic field is affecting in our solar system, both on the solar system scale and on the solar scale. And that was amazing.
Right. And I mean, he wasn't just content to work on just the sun.
No.
He took this idea of interactions between magnetic fields and plasma to many different scales.
Yeah, he was the person who figured out that there should be magnetic instabilities in galaxies. So when you look at a galaxy, you can get up and down motions in things, and they also have a magnetic field due to the spinning of the material around the black hole in the core that is parallel to the disk. And because of the orientation in the magnetic field, when you get material that is coupled to the magnetic field, when you have charged material in the disk that is moving up or down, you will get a amplification of that movement due to the interaction with the magnetic field. So when we see these warps in disks, to explain that, we have to look not just at the gravitational interaction of something perturbing the disk, but also the magnetic field's effect on perturbing material in the disks.
And this idea of or this technique for measuring the magnetic fields around some kind of an object, this is all really brand new,
Yeah,
where you can essentially measure the polarity of the photons, the radio photons that are coming from some object. And there's this incredible work, say done by Meerkat. I know that's one of your
yeah,
favorites, where they are able to scan chunks of the sky, measure the polarity of the radiation of the radio waves that are coming from this area,
yeah,
and that is because the photons have been turned into various directions and causing this polarity that's visible. And you can then map out the large scale. Alma does this a lot as well. You
yeah.
can map out the large scale structure of the magnetic field lines around what you're looking at. And this whole field of predicting these magnetic fields, the way they sculpt and create galactic wide versions of the solar wind, all trace back to Parker's work in doing the math and making these predictions. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's like if they come up with a spacecraft that's also going to search for, examine the large scale galactic winds coming off the Milky Way, they'll also have to call it the Parker Galactic Probe or something.
Yeah, it's he was a theorist who took the ideas behind magnetic field theory and applied it anywhere there could be charged material. And the sun was something he kept returning to over and over again. The corona heating problem was one of the things that I think he played with the most. Later in his career in 1987, in looking at the coronal heating problem, this is what we talked about in the last episode, where the outermost, most diffuse part of the sun is like millions of degrees. Very confusing. Um, and he was the one who postulated that nanoflares, small breaks in the magnetic field lines that are carrying hot plasma, could release sufficient energy to heat the corona. And these are things that the Parker Solar Probe was designed to go look for. And and all these ideas, he was always out there saying, "Hey, I'm a theorist. This is what the math says. Observers go prove me wrong." And that is a terrifying place to be. And when he was
Right.
asked to provide advice to young scientists after having this entire career of over and over again predicting things and sometimes being mocked, his advice was, and I'm going to read the quote, if you do something new and innovative, expect trouble, but think critically about it, because if you're wrong, you want to be the first one to know that. And this was advice he gave in 2018 to early career researchers. I
Oh,
just
that's
love
fantastic.
that idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're wrong, you want to be the first to know you're wrong. Yeah, that's so good. Um, you know, I mean that idea, the nanoflares that you mentioned, right? Like he back in the 80s
Hmm.
did the math, predicted that there should be these miniature flares on the surface of the sun, scaled down versions of the big bright flares that we see every now and then. These are happening all the time, and that they were responsible for the coronal heating. And then you get the detection and measurement of these nanoflares by both Parker Solar Probe and the Solar Orbiter, exactly as Parker had predicted. That we just didn't have the technology
Yeah.
to to sense them beforehand. And so I think, that prediction of his that was, just doing some math here, like whatever, 40 years old plus,
Yeah.
was finally confirmed by the spacecraft that bears his name.
And I,
Once again,
I
he was right.
did you
Like,
watch the Parker Solar Probe launch on NASA TV?
yeah,
Were you scared for him?
well, he was,
Like
I mean, he was 90, oh,
92.
92 when it launched.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Surrounded by boisterous engineers and people clapping. And yeah, he looked pretty frail already at the time, but he was there
He
and
was
he watched it
there,
launch.
and what I was scared for was, so once upon a time they waited until missions were launched to rename them. So like
Mm.
the Fermi X-ray satellite was glassed up until like 4 days after launch when it became Fermi. Um and so we saw that over and over and over again. And then they started naming missions before they launched because that gave you more of an emotional connection and made it harder for Congress to murder them. This was particularly important
The
for the Nancy.
spacecraft, not the people.
Right, right, the spacecraft.
Yeah.
So this was particularly important for the Nancy Grace Roman telescope. Um, but we never, except for the Parker Solar Probe, have named something after someone living. And as I've talked about in the past, I had a mission I needed for my dissertation blow up right after launch. And
Yes.
so that haunts me. And so like I'm watching the NASA stream and the whole time I'm like, "Oh god, it's going to blow up. It's going to break his heart. He's going to have a heart attack." Like this was the worst casing that was going
Yeah.
on in the back of my brain. Everything was fine. Nicole Fox, who was head of Helio at the time, was with him the entire time. And in fact, after his death, not death, after, that was the wrong phrase. Rich, please correct that. And in fact, after his retirement and after the spacecraft's launch, she continued to send him data from the Parker Solar Probe for him to review. This is
Oh,
a
wow.
man who retired but just kept doing research.
Yeah. And we see that a lot. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of
there's so
normal.
many scientists. Yeah, exactly. The scientists, they don't retire, they die. They just keep working. All right, we're gonna talk about this some more, but it's time for another break. And we're back. So, I mean, we saw the launch of the Parker Solar Probe, and he was still alive,
Yeah,
but uh, and they had named it in 2017 after him, but then he did pass away in 2022.
yeah. He was age 94. He was survived by his wife of 67 years.
Wow,
He
relationship
had,
goals.
what was that?
Relationship goals.
Yeah, yeah. He had
Yeah.
both a son and a daughter. And his son had some of the best stories. So apparently, like the kids growing up knew their dad was a scientist, but didn't really know what he did. They had no idea that he was famous at all. And apparently, he was someone that worked really hard to have a work life balance and would tell his kids that anyone who's working over 40 hours is out on life.
Hmm.
This was someone who was very much your Great Lakes Midwesterner. He loved to camp, he loved to go hiking, and his hobby was woodworking. His son Eric said in an interview that pretty much all the furniture in the house was made by his dad. He was
Wow.
that kind of a woodworker. And he also liked to carve figures of famous people. And I tried, but I couldn't find any photos of these. And I really wish I could, because just the idea of this person who, as a scientist, I hold in such esteem, imagining him sitting on his front patio, like who was he carving figures of that he considered to be famous? That's
Yeah.
what I want to know. Um, and no one said anything bad about him that I could find. He was the kind of person that was described as humble, which makes sense with his kids having no idea what he did. He was someone who was described as willing to do and publish research that people didn't believe initially. He took those risks. And so
Hmm.
he was constantly back and forth throughout his career of, oh, he's such a visionary, and oh, that idea is kind of insert negative phrase. That's such a hard place to be, and to remain humble while
Hmm.
living in that kind of a dichotomy. Just those are scientists' personality goals. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I had heard him described as somebody who was very creative, out of the box,
yeah,
thought of, understood the implications and the consequences of various observations to sort of figure out what happened next, but
yeah,
then was very careful and um, diligent
yeah,
in how he explored the mathematics for what that would imply, and was willing to throw out, as you say, as soon as you figure out you're wrong, get rid of it. But and then when you balance that with that perspective on work-life balance, on shunning workaholism, and instead build a career where you're still thinking about it, as you said, even when he was 92, he was looking
yeah.
at the results coming from Parker, that it's more of a marathon than a sprint. And I think that's a really great way to live your life.
Yeah, and his dean at the University of Chicago from when he was an emeritus described him as someone with boundless energy, one of those people who, just like they always say every visionary should do on the internet, he was someone who got up super early in the morning,
Yeah.
worked with great. They always described him as having amazing intuition. And one of the things that I saw that was like, oh, that's not quite work life balance, but I understand. He had the kind of intuition where if he was in the middle of eating dinner and a thought came to him, he'd wander away to go write it off and then come back to the table. And
Yeah.
I can just like I know theorists like this where all of a sudden they're off. Okay. The idea took over. And
But that's experience, right? That's
yeah,
knowing that if you don't get the idea like
yeah,
down immediately, then it's lost
it's
forever.
gone. Yeah.
It's gone. And so if you don't capture it at that moment with enough fidelity that you can then explore it in more depth, that's the challenge of the shower thought, right? That's the
Right.
problem. You're walking along and you have a good idea and then you're like, okay, this idea is so good that I'm gonna hold on to it now and then I'll think about it later on. And then you get home and you're like, what did I think of again? And it's gone and you mourn it. And so I
Yeah.
think that's just purely wisdom and experience to know, okay, idea pops up, I better get it down right away. And even if I have to interrupt dinner,
Yes.
right, to do that, because you're always digesting these problems. And I think back to that idea of that work-life balance. Like I find I only really make progress on some of the more challenging problems that I'm trying to deal with when I'm in a place that is a lot more balanced. And even when I'm
Yeah.
doing a task that's completely unrelated, I could be out in the forest cleaning up, uh, brush and go, oh yeah, that's what I should do. And then I have to drop what I'm doing and write it down immediately, or
For
it's
me, it's
gone.
folding laundry. All my best ideas come to me
Yeah,
while I'm folding laundry.
yeah. Now he won every award that you could win, pretty much, except
Yeah.
for, did he get the Nobel? I
He
don't think
did
he got the
not.
Nobel. No, but he
No.
got, you know,
Everything else.
everything else. Yeah, wrote over 400 papers, which
Yeah.
is just crazy. I mean, you imagine, like, say you're writing papers for 40 years.
So
That's 10 a
so
year.
he
That's a paper a month, pretty much.
so let's assume that he wrote papers between age 22 when he got his undergraduate degree and 94. So that's 72 years. That's four or five papers, some years 8 or 10 probably per year, and most of us aspire to average one or two a year. So
Yeah.
that's truly remarkable.
Yeah. Multiple books, like
Yeah.
4 books. Many are used
Textbook.
as textbooks by people who are teaching the field. Yeah. Wow.
It's the correct decision that they named the Parker Solar Probe after him.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you got to be there and see it and to be sharp enough at 94 to understand and want to be part of the research. It's something all of us can only dream of. He
Totally.
had Parkinson's for the last 10 years of his life, but his brain was still going.
Yeah.
And I really am saddened that this is someone who I never met that lived and did research in my lifetime because he seems like a truly amazing human.
That's incredible. Very cool. Well, thank you, Pamela.
And thank you, Fraser. And thank you to everyone out in our audience. We each week thank a. Sorry, I have to rearrange my screen for a moment. Rich, you're going to have to edit this out because I lost a window. Oh, I moved it up there. That was silly of me. All right. And each week we think. Sorry, Rich. I'm really sorry. Um and each week we like to thank our patrons. I wish we could thank all of you, but we only have enough time to thank those of you who are $10 and up. And even then, it's getting challenging. This week, I would like to thank Zero Chill, Alex Cohen, Andrew Stevenson, Astrosets, Benjamin Carrier, Bob Krail, Brian Kilbeast, Mansky, Daniel Donaldson, David Boggety, Diane Philippin, Ed, Felix Groot, Galactic President, Scooper Star McScoopsalot, Glenn McDavid, Greg Wild, J. Alex Anderson, Jean Baptiste Lemartinet, Maybe. I think I said that right. Jeff Wilson, Jim Drake, John Trays, Just Me and the Cat, Keith Murray, Clem Bodrov, Love Science, I.C. McGuire Butts, Les Howard, Mark Stephen Rasnack, Matthias Hayden, Michael Prochada, Mike Heisey, Paul D. Disney, Peter, Robert Hundle, Sam Brooks and his mom, Scott Cohn, Simon Parton, the Air Major, and Tim Garish. Thank you all so much for everything you do. We would not be here without our patrons, and I would not feel slightly lightheaded if there were fewer names. You're awesome.
Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Bye bye. And then they saved. All right.
7:28.
File. Okay, I saved it. There's the window. I'm having losing Windows problems. All right. So, Matthew Henson asked somewhere in chat. Okay, so where is it? If I've been to the St. Louis Science Center, which tells me you joined late. I'm actually giving a talk at the St. Louis Science Center on First Friday in October. It will be on citizen science. The themes for the night are Barbie and STEM careers. So my talk will start with a slide that says, "My job is space." I will be wearing pink, and I'm going to focus on women's great discoveries through citizen science. I hope I see you there, Matthew. We have a CosmoQuest half a table every month, and the other half a table, Annie Wilson and I share our artwork, and we sell stuff basically to pay for all the supplies for the booth. So yeah, buy our art. It pays for science education. I now feel the need to say, I have an Etsy store. It's Star Strider Studios on Etsy. Buy a planet, buy a solar system, you're funding science education.
Very cool.
All right, looking for other questions.
Joe Dubs says, Mom was a retired neuroscience nurse. I find podcasts that deal with that neuroscience for her because it scratches that itch in her brain. Her Alzheimer's is at bay when viewing data. That's really interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
That even a person suffering from Alzheimer's, who ironically, right, is like my mom passed away from Alzheimer's. And I think about what kinds of things would connect her and bring her back into the moment. And for her it would be writing and ideas and things like that because she was a writer. But yeah, that's really interesting to sort of think about how you can connect with this analytical part of a person's mind in a way that's different from their emotional point, and that maybe if they are suffering from Alzheimer's, different parts degrade at different rates. So your mom would have found this fascinating as a neuroscience nurse, thinking about the implications of giving people analytical data as they are declining from neuroscience. So yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. Alzheimer's sucks.
Yeah, it really does.
Where's my AI solution to this problem?
Yeah. I mean, everyone in my family dies young, so they don't have a chance to get Alzheimer's. I'm not sure which is winning, but there's less suffering when people die young.
Yeah. Ugh. It's morbid. So Zappan says maybe an episode about Hans Alphen, bit similar with plasma magnetic fields.
Waves?
Yeah, but is there an Alphen spacecraft?
No.
No, there isn't. Should there be?
Yes. There's enough solar probes.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And in fact, I think like the Solar Orbiter mentioned Alphen waves, and
it
so
does.
Yeah,
they're the ones that confirmed it.
Yeah, so I think it's time to rename the Solar Orbiter. Boring. To name it after Alphen. Hal McKinney asked if ChatGPT returns New York Times content. So
It does.
they were suing ChatGPT because they were apparently recreating articles on the New York Times or blocks of content and so on. And I mean, all the big AI companies are voraciously scraping all of our content, and
Yeah.
that's just the reality.
Yeah, even
And
LinkedIn has they
mhm,
automatically opted in all users to have their
yep,
content scraped. So you have to go in and manually opt out.
yep. And same thing with Meta. All
Yeah.
of your public data is now incorporated into their AI, which, feels bad for Meta. Like that mostly is going to be garbage. When you think
It's
about
true.
the kinds of comments and stuff that you see at the bottom of posts, like it's not a lot of useful information in there. So I'd be amazed if they get very much that's really super valuable compared to science journals, things like that.
Yeah, and this is where um I think we talked about it last week. You start seeing AIs that are rickrolling because they've scraped so many pages with rickrolls,
Yeah,
and you just end up with nonsense because human beings write parodies and sarcasm.
yeah. So I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to make you feel comfortable, Pamela. Which was that I just did an interview with someone who was asking me about, the amount of time you've been doing this 25 years, blah, blah, blah. And, you've gone from being a rank amateur to someone who seems to know a lot about space. And,
Yeah.
often when I interview people, they're like, I can't believe how much you know about this kind of, those are really good questions and so on, and I could talk about in situ resource utilization. I could talk about plasma physics. I could talk about neutron stars, any topic I could talk about it. And a big chunk of it is, I got my PhD from you. Thank you. When you think about the fact that I've had private access to a PhD astronomer for 17 years, that I have been able to ask whatever nonsense question pops into my brain, and then I'm doing my reporting work and incorporating a lot of that stuff. You know, it 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 came from like a big schwack of that knowledge came from you. So thank you for being my personal PhD advisor for the last 17 years. And although I don't have the PhD, I feel like I've done the work and you've done the work as well. So thank you.
You are very welcome. You have been a wonderful learner, and I have to admit I am so grateful for everything you've learned over the years. Because when we first started, you would ask questions where I was like, "Oh shit, how do I answer this without making him look bad?" And you
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
now like I will have a moment where my brain has dropped a detail about the universe onto the floor and it has rolled away. And you can catch me when my brain doesn't have the answer because we take turns remembering things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely gone from, and I see myself. It's funny because
Yeah.
I'll see people ask me questions, and they will be the kinds of questions that I would have asked. Why can't we turn the world's telescopes into a big interferometer? It's the kind of question that I directly asked you, and you gave me an answer. And now that I understand way more about interferometers, when people ask me that question, I'm able to give an answer that began from you and then was extended into, what happens when a black hole and an antimatter black hole meet. These are things what's inside the observable universe. Like these are the kinds of questions that I just get over and over and over again. And obviously, I was on that same journey
Yeah.
where I had that question and I asked you and you set me straight. And then I incorporated that into what I do. And yeah, where we're at now in the journey is much more as peers, where I come with a certain amount of facts loaded in my brain, and you come with a certain number of facts loaded in the brain. The dynamic is still there, where
Yeah.
I'm asking you the questions, but I am no longer just listening intently at what you're saying and asking further questions. I can also provide a backup to your brain when you drop a fact or if there's something that maybe you don't have readily at your disposal. And
And I love it.
and yeah, it's great. It's great to be able to be a lot more peers on this. Um, and yet I definitely wouldn't be where I am without having this as an outlet. So yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much.
It's really
Keep
my
up the good
pleasure.
work.
I love doing this. You are a
Yeah.
great collaborator.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got 3 more minutes left. Anybody else have a question?
I have a random thing that I can share
Hmm.
that is really so I have a brand new doctor. Sometimes you need to get a new doctor because your doctor has done something that just made no sense, so you get a new one. And I really, really like her. And I've had high cholesterol my entire life. And doctors are always like, well, you should lose some weight. But that's their answer to everything. Elbow hurts, you
Yeah.
should lose some weight. And she's like, okay, so first of all, this is actually genetic for you because I looked at your full history and you exercise a lot. This is genetic.
Yep.
However, your family history for heart attacks and your cholesterol level horrifies me. So you shall be more active even than you are now. And
Mm.
so I've been playing a lot of games in VR because VR requires you to be super active for a lot of these games. And I've started streaming it cuz I haven't found a lot of streamers who are streaming VR games. Last night was the first time I tried it. I'm still trying to figure out how to get the sound right. I hate sound. This will be the bane
Yep.
of our existence. I will be a 99-year-old if I break family trends, little old lady, still
Right.
fighting to get sound to work.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
but I will probably be around 10 p.m. Central streaming VR games on my Twitch channel, Star Strider.
And,
Um, I've
and
been
what's your heart?
playing.
You're using the Quest 3, right?
Yeah, I'm using the Quest 3.
Yeah. Yeah, here's mine right here.
I love my Quest 3.
Yeah, yeah. Did we get ours like at roughly the same
Yeah, we
time?
did.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I
Yeah, it's
got mine a
amazing.
couple weeks before you. I didn't get my husband who is responsible for all good electronics in my life. Got me the Quest 3 and he got me an aftermarket head thing that makes it a whole lot more pleasant to use. I'll send you
Oh,
the
very
info on which
cool.
one I have.
Yeah. I
Um,
got the charging stock,
yes, I love that.
but mine's busted, so they're sending
Oh,
me a replacement. But you just put the headset down and it recharges. I also got the the Quest account that gives
subscription?
you games. Yeah,
Yeah, same.
the games every month. Yeah, yeah.
And then
Good.
Vader Immortal, I haven't started playing the story part of the game yet, but there's a lightsaber dojo in the game. And
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
you can go in and like do Jedi training with like the little balls that zot you, and then you have droids with lightsabers that come after you as you get to higher and higher levels.
That's amazing.
And yeah, I apparently really like attacking things with swords in VR.
So I've got to run. I got to
Okay.
do
Yeah.
another meeting immediately. So
Okay.
unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say goodbye to everybody now.
That's okay. I can
Yeah.
end
So
this
thank
once
you
I find
everyone
my
for hanging out
mouse.
with us this week. Thank you in advance to everyone who has to edit our nonsense. We appreciate it. Thanks to the moderators. And I will be back tonight at 5 o'clock Pacific time to do my regular live stream.
All
So
right.
John Seffel and Zap Fan are right there. I see them.
Okay. Bye-bye
Um,
everyone. We're off.